What's up guys, my name is Ace, and the Black Ops 7 beta is coming to an end, or by the time this video goes live, it should be over. Servers are likely offline at this point. And so in today's video, it's time for my final beta review and feedback. I'll be sharing the things that I liked throughout the beta, the things I didn't like so much. I've got some feedback I'm going to be providing with various things. And then finally, toward the end, I'll just be sharing my final thoughts on how things appear to be shaping up for Black Ops 7 based on my beta experience. And let's start this off with the good section before getting into the negatives and the feedback. And the first really big good thing I wanted to talk about here is the matchmaking experience once the open playlist was added to the beta. Before that took place, when we were playing with the same matchmaking system we've had over the past several years of Call of Duty, I genuinely wasn't having a good time with the experience, despite the fact that I liked a lot of what the gameplay was offering. I just found that I am so burnt out with this matchmaking system, it was exhausting to play, and I just straight up wasn't having a good time playing the game. The moment they added the open playlist though, it changed the game entirely for me, and it brought back so many memories of classic Call of Duty. I was suddenly having a blast with the game, even while playing solo, which is something that has been almost non-existent for me in the past several years. It seemed like I had to party up just to somewhat combat the matchmaking system and the team balancing system. I no longer feel that's the case when playing in the open playlist. And for some reason, I've been getting a lot of criticism for saying that, and people saying I'm getting paid to say that I had a good time with the open playlist, which is insane. I've been pushing hard for this for 6 years now, to go back to a more classic Call of Duty matchmaking system, and it turns out I was totally right in pushing for that. It completely changed the gameplay experience. It was so much more varied. Every match felt very different, like I never knew what I was going to get on a match-to-match basis. It didn't feel like my recent performance was heavily influencing the performance I was about to have. I didn't feel like when I played well, I was just given a pity match. It just felt like random luck. I was still getting very difficult matches mixed in there as well, which was also fine because, again, it just felt organic. It didn't feel like I was getting a really tough match because I played too well in the previous game. Also, matchmaking times were nearly instant, whereas that's been a pretty big problem on my account for years now, is it seemed to take forever to find a match. That wasn't the case in this playlist, and on average, my connection experience was also better while playing on this. I had fewer outlier matches with a high ping, and that's been another one of my really big complaints in recent years, is my ping fluctuating on a match-to-match basis so heavily. So since that open playlist was added, I had so much more fun with the game. I found I could play solo and even branch out a little bit, play around with some interesting setups or play styles. And I was just genuinely having so much fun doing that. And it was just such a refreshing change of pace compared to the past quite a few years of Call of Duty. And I'm just chiming in from the future here. This is where I initially said I'm very concerned about what they're going to be doing with this in the future going into launch. However, I had to re-record this because this morning we got the big news. They've confirmed the open matchmaking will be our default matchmaking in the game at launch for Black Ops 7. And on top of that, we're getting persistent lobbies. So the two biggest wins we could have possibly had in a Call of Duty game, we just got, and I really hope this is successful and this becomes the norm again for the franchise in general. But time will have to tell on that, looking long term. Now, getting back to the good things, focusing more on the game design rather than just the matchmaking from here on out. The one big thing that stands out here is the maps are quite solid. I really like the maps overall. I wouldn't say there was a single map in the beta that I thought was a bad map. They were all at least decent, and some of them are quite good. And that's really refreshing coming off of Black Ops 6, where that was one of my biggest complaints with their game design. Then after that, the gunplay feels really good in the game. They've reduced a lot of the visual noise, the muzzle smoke, muzzle flash, random visual recoil. They've toned all of that back quite a bit, and that makes for a much tighter gunplay experience that I was really enjoying throughout the beta. When it comes to our attachment selection, I think they have made some nice improvements from the Black Ops 6 attachment selection. Like, it's not all that different, but they have provided more opportunity for interesting combinations where you can actually stack multiple attachments toward the same stat. Whereas in Black Ops 6, it was often just you have one attachment slot that can have an impact on that particular stat, and that did get a little bit boring and cookie cutter. Obviously, I do need more time to test this properly, and it would be nice to see the advanced stats as well. That wasn't included in the beta build of the game, but I'm sure that will be there at launch. But so far, the attachment selection seems like a nice step up from Black Ops 6. Next, the score streak power and earn rate is far better than Black Ops 6 as well. These streaks, for the most part in the beta, were very satisfying to use. They felt a lot more reasonable to earn as well, relative to Black Ops 6. Part of that's the matchmaking, but part of that is also just the game design. Like, it takes 100 less score to earn a UAV, for instance, compared to Black Ops 6. Then the new Overload game mode, I enjoy. I think that's a really nice addition to the game. It definitely gives some uplink vibes, but it's got its own unique style to it, especially with the multiple points that you can score in. I think there's a lot of interesting elements to that game mode, and I was pleasantly surprised with that. And really, those are the primary things from the beta itself. There's also a lot of things I'm looking forward to at launch, like Specialist, for instance. We didn't have access to that in the beta, but the Specialist Strike package, where you can earn perks when you go on a streak instead of score streak rewards, that's coming at launch as a wild card, and I'm really, really looking forward to that. But this is the beta review, so we haven't seen how that plays out yet. Next, something that I wanted to include in the good section, but honestly, I'm gonna put this more in a mixed thoughts section here before we get into the bad or the feedback. The wall jump mechanic in this game, I think, is quite interesting. I really like how they've integrated it with the map design in the game. The maps were clearly built with that wall jump in mind, and I like using wall jumps to take interesting routes. In saying that, at the same time, sometimes using the wall jump just feels a little bit awkward. It can sometimes be a little bit tricky to make it do exactly what you want it to do or what you expect it to do. Perhaps that just comes with time and I just need more experience with it to really nail down the fundamentals of using it properly. But I would say at the moment, the wall jump's kind of up in the air for me. It might turn out that down the road, I get kind of burnt out on the wall jump and I see it more as a gimmick than anything. Or I might get better with the wall jump and adapt to it more, and I might really enjoy it throughout the year. I'm kind of on the fence right now, to be honest. Next, let's get into the things that I wasn't a big fan of, or at least I have some feedback on. And this one is going to be a little bit all over the place in no particular order. It's kind of funny, the first few things I had on my list here have already been taken care of because I started making this list the moment I started playing the game. Too many doors on the maps, they've already cut down on that. I still think the range at which doors open when you get close to them, that could perhaps be improved a little bit more even. But overall, my complaints about the doors largely went away after they made that update mid-beta. Also, I had ping inconsistency on here. That largely went away with the open playlist. My ping got a whole lot more consistent the moment that playlist arrived. So much for ping is king over the past 6 years. Another thing was minimap zoom. That was on my list. It still is kind of on my list, but in a different way. They did increase the coverage of the minimap by, I believe it was 15%. Partway through the beta. While that was a nice improvement, I can't help but think that it would be nice to go a little bit bigger than that. Maybe I'm just being too nitpicky here, or perhaps maybe just a forward intel perk down the road is something that we could maybe expect to see. I think that would be a nice addition to the game. I would like to at least have the option to have a wider minimap radius. I know the squad link field upgrade, when standing in the radius of that, it will increase your minimap size, but I think that should be something you can do with a perk as well. Next up, something that's always a hot topic, I feel like every year with Call of Duty, because it's difficult to find that perfect balance. This is footstep audio. In the Black Ops 7 beta, footstep audio, even without the ninja perk, was almost non-existent in my experience. I had many situations where people would sprint right up to me. I wouldn't hear them at all until I was already dead or till I was being shot at. That's not to say that I literally never heard any footsteps. There were a few moments here or there where I would catch the faintest sound of a footstep and it would help me out. But that was quite rare in my experience. And while I absolutely always lean in the direction of preferring them to have footstep audio too quiet rather than too loud, I do think if we're aiming for balance, there should be just a little bit more footstep audio, even if it's just for really close range situations. I don't think somebody should be able to literally sprint right up behind you without you ever hearing a footstep from them unless they're using the ninja perk. Or at the very least, perhaps make it so slides or wall bounces have a little more audio to them so you can hear those things take place a little bit better, again, unless the enemy is using the ninja perk. This is absolutely a very fine line, and again, I absolutely don't want them to go too far in the other direction. But I'm here to provide my honest feedback, and I do honestly think the footsteps were a little too quiet, especially in very close ranges. After that, let's talk spawns a little bit. I think spawns absolutely still need some work. I like the maps, but I often find they're a little too chaotic and a little too unpredictable. I feel like sometimes enemies are just popping up from all different angles, and this is largely due to the spawn design in the game. Obviously, it's a beta, they need to collect data. They've already had one spawn pass. I think we're probably gonna need a couple more at least, and I'm sure they will continue to work on this over time as they do every single year with Call of Duty. So I think we'll just have to wait to see how things settle in when it comes to spawns, but in the state they were in the beta, I can see they absolutely need some work. After that, I have some perk feedback. I made a dedicated video on this that I will link down below if you want to hear my thoughts in more detail. So we're going to kind of skim through this a little bit. I think there's absolutely a dexterity problem. It is too much of a crutch perk. I think there are several potential options on how this could be adjusted and fixed for the full build of the game. Whether that's building the ability to aim down sight while sliding and wall bouncing in by default, and then making dexterity just improve your accuracy while doing that, and then maybe give it the power to boost mantle speeds as well to compensate for that effective nerf to it. Perhaps just noticeably tighten up that tactical stance spread while sliding and trying to aim down sight without dexterity so that you can compete a little bit better with dexterity users. Or something I think that could also have some positive upstream effects to the overall health of the game is to tone back the sliding in general. In the beta, I was a little disappointed to find that the slide didn't feel all that different from Black Ops 6. And one of my criticisms of Black Ops 6 was the fact that I just felt like the slide was a little bit overboard, even coming from somebody that prefers more movement rather than less movement in a Call of Duty game. I think the game would benefit from dialing back the slide just a bit so it doesn't feel like it's the default option for constantly getting around the map and challenging gunfights. It should still be a very good, viable tool that you can use, but I think toning it back a little bit would take some power away from dexterity since sliding wouldn't feel as necessary. And I think it would help the pacing of the game a little bit, and it would help the game become a lot less polarizing because I know it does push a lot of players away that just can't keep up with this level of movement or don't want to keep up with this level of movement because it's just so powerful in its current state. Either way, when it comes to that dexterity perk, I do feel something needs to be done about this for launch. Also, I think some of the perks could use some shuffling around to different tiers. Some other perks could perhaps use a little bit of buffing as well. Again, I covered all the details with that feedback in my dedicated perk feedback video. But I think there is room for improvement when it comes to perks in this game. Next, something that I was quite disappointed to find when I booted up Black Ops 7 and started looking at attachments is tac stance is once again tied to a laser attachment. Just like in Black Ops 6, and that was one of my criticisms in Black Ops 6, is I don't feel like you should have to use an attachment in order to use the tac stance mechanic. That's how Modern Warfare 3 handled it, and it worked out great in my opinion. I do think, of course, if you want to have a really good tac stance build, then yeah, that's where attachments come into play, and having a laser that tightens up your tac stance spread, totally cool with me. But I think the default mechanic should be available without the use of an attachment. I should be able to just switch to tac stance whenever I feel like it. After that, a really minor thing I noticed with the gameplay is the out of bounds timer is quite short. And when you combine that with the fact that unintentional wall bounces tend to happen fairly often, at least in my experience, I would sometimes find myself accidentally out of bounds because I would wall bounce myself out of bounds unintentionally. And it would be nice to have just a little bit more time to get back into the fight due to how often that seems to happen. Maybe that's just a skill issue that I'll adapt to over time as well, so I don't wall bounce out of the map too often. But another thing I noticed is in certain spots, like specifically in this spot on exposure, it seems like the out of bounds insta-death box is a little too high up on this gap to the point where you can't grab that ledge and mantle up without dying. At least I experienced that a couple times where I thought I was going to at least make it far enough to catch that ledge and mantle up, but I just instantly died the moment I touched that ledge. Then a few bugs that I noticed is overclocks on my streaks were often resetting themselves. I don't know why that was happening, but I would change one streak and then it would remove the overclock from a different streak that I didn't touch at all while I was changing the other streak. I noticed some perk bugs as well, like the ghost perk. When using that, your arrow on the minimap isn't fading away properly while moving and activating ghost. I believe ghost is activating, so I think it is actually working, but you're not getting that visual feedback on the minimap like we would normally expect with this style of ghost. Also, the looper perk wasn't always working for me. I would earn all my streaks once and then continue earning score, but I couldn't earn my streaks a second time, and that's literally what that perk does. So that was a bit awkward. Another bug I ran into early on in the beta, and they may have taken care of this because I only saw it within the first few days, but with the Gravemaker, a lot of times if I would fire a shot or two and then I would put the Gravemaker away, pull out my gun, get a kill or two, and then pull the Gravemaker back out, all within the same life, of course, because otherwise you would lose the Gravemaker. When I pull it back out, I would have no ammo. I wouldn't be able to shoot it. I would have it in my hands like I should be able to use it, but I couldn't use it because there was no ammo appearing when I had ammo when I put it away. Then getting a little bit outside of the gameplay, one very nitpicky thing that won't affect the vast majority of the player base, but it does affect me when trying to party up with viewers. What I normally do is I just open up my party, people join, it fills up, and then we hop into a game. In all of the recent Call of Duty games, including Black Ops 6, we had the ability to set a party limit. So I could make it so we could only have 6 people in the party. So the first 5 people that join me are the ones that get in. Once we get our 6 players, I can search for a match. In the Black Ops 7 beta, there was no ability to set a party limit. And as a result, if I didn't close my party up after the 5 people had joined, then a 7th and 8th and 9th person would join. And then that prevents me from matchmaking because you can only matchmake with a party of 6. So it would be nice to get that setting back, and not only that, it would be nice to have that setting saved. So if I set my party limit at 6, and then I finish my gaming session and I come back the next day, it would be nice if that were still set at 6, and then I could change that again manually if I chose. I realize that one's getting a little bit nitpicky, and again, it's not going to affect the vast majority of the player base, but it would be a nice quality of life thing for myself and a few other people out there that interact with this system. Next, speaking of the menus, I am really getting sick of these menu screens where the characters are like infinitely walking, and more importantly, the camera is constantly switching angles all over the place. I know this has zero impact on the actual gameplay experience of the game, and it might come off as like super nitpicky, but I just find that to be so visually jarring to have that in the background. It's just a menu. I would much prefer a static scene without all this crazy movement, especially with the camera constantly jumping around. In my eyes, not only would that look a whole lot better, but it would also help differentiate this COD just a little bit more visually from many of the recent CODs that have had this menu. And honestly, that's pretty much it. Those are the primary things I've got on my list here of the feedback that I've got for Black Ops 7. Overall, when it comes to my final thoughts of this, while I had a super rough start with the beta, the open playlist totally turned things around for me. And once we got that playlist, it was genuinely the most fun I've had in Call of Duty in so many years while playing solo. Now, because of this massive contrast between those two experiences for me, my interest in Black Ops 7 almost entirely hinges on what they end up doing at launch for matchmaking. And again, just chiming in here with the update we got this morning, the style of matchmaking I was having a blast with throughout the beta is going to be default at launch, and we're getting persistent lobbies. This has spiked my interest and hype in this game drastically. I'm still a bit nervous that it's not going to be an overly popular game. I think COD has burnt a lot of people out and pushed them away. But for me, my interest is at an all-time high for this game. And I genuinely think with this matchmaking system, assuming it sticks around and it's not just something they do at launch and then they realize, actually, this isn't working out well, so we're going to revert back to the matchmaking we've had over the past several years. As long as that sticks around and persistent lobbies stick around, I will be sticking around as well, because at least for me and what I look for in Call of Duty, it's absolutely back. My biggest complaints have finally been addressed after 6 years of fighting this battle. So of course, I'm very happy to see this news and much more excited for the launch of this game now than I was previously. Now, obviously, that doesn't mean that this game is going to be absolutely flawless. There are still things that I think need some adjustments, need to be worked out a little bit. But some more general thoughts on the game outside of the matchmaking. I do think Black Ops 7 is a very clear step up from Black Ops 6. They've made a lot of nice improvements, especially with like the map design, for instance. That really makes a big difference. But just in general, I do think this is the next step from Black Ops 6. However, I think one problem here, for a lot of people at least, is it doesn't feel like as much of a leap forward from Black Ops 6 as a lot of people would like to see. I mean, it is a sequel, so I expect some level of similarity, but in many ways it feels like it's more than just that. Like, the overall class structure really didn't change much at all. We got hybrid combat specialties and overclocks. Outside of that, it's the same as Black Ops 6. The movement feels very, very similar, even though they've made adjustments and like they've taken away tac sprint as the default movement, which is great, by the way. I should have included that in the good section, but whatever, you get it here. And then they've added wall bounces. Outside of that, it's basically just the same movement as Black Ops 6. The weapon handling also feels very similar, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. I think it handles well. A lot of the menus also look very similar. So I totally get that criticism. This isn't a super innovative leap forward for Call of Duty, but it is a very clear step forward from Black Ops 6, in my opinion at least. Additionally, while this game really suits me and I vibe with it really heavily, a lot of what I vibe with is simply subjective stuff. Like, I personally love a near future setting in Call of Duty. It's one of the reasons I loved Black Ops 2 so much, because at the time that was a near future setting, and I thought that was great. It allowed the devs to have a fair amount of creativity with some potential future weapons, and they can get quite creative with that. Also, something that's quite subjective and potentially polarizing is they're leaning quite hard toward a movement skill gap rather than a positioning skill gap in this game. And I tend to like movement. I like the advanced movement Call of Duties. I like this movement so far, although I wouldn't be opposed to some changes. I think some changes could be good and healthy for it. I do like this movement, but I can understand being on the other side of that and just not being into this at all, because sliding is way too powerful. The wall jumps may be a little too jarring for a lot of people and difficult to really master. So if you're somebody that doesn't like this game, I totally get it. I think there are plenty of things with this game that are simply not going to mesh well with certain types of players. I think that's fine. I think the pendulum is probably going to swing too far in the other direction the next year. We'll have to wait to see how things go there. So maybe for some people, this just isn't going to be your year, and the next one is going to suit you so much better. For me and what I look for in a Call of Duty, I'm actually really liking Black Ops 7 so far with the classic matchmaking in the open playlist. And this is where I'm going to leave things, and I'd love to hear from you guys in those comments down below. What are some of the things you liked about the Black Ops 7 beta? What are some of the things you dislike or have some feedback on? And what are your overall impressions now that we've played through the beta? Are you looking forward to Black Ops 7 or not so much? Just let me know down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.